Get me out of the way. Want me to having it. Get me out the way. Want me to having it. Yeah. Get me out of the way. Want me to having it. Get me out the way. Want me to having it. Yeah.
Coming up right now.
Tonight, we discuss Predator, the 1980s classic with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Then we continue our community watch-through discussion of The Terminal List, Episode 4. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. And that didn't work. And welcome back to the Writer Brothers, your Tuesday night home for various pop culture stuff that we decide that we like to do and talk about. I am, of course, your host, Petey York. I am joined by the lovely Corione, Witch in Residence, and, of course, the equally less lovely Pollo Zapatos. Gentlemen, we've got a good show tonight. We're taking a look back at an 80s classic action movie and comparing it to what we thought with Prey. And already right out of the gate, we got fan mail from R&A. Good evening to you, R&A. Welcome back to the show and the discussion. Glad to have you here. So Predator. Well, I'll go ahead and start because it was my first time watching this movie, and I've never seen it before. The only thing I'd seen was clips of Predator 2 when I was really young, and that was on TV. And Alien vs. Predator was the first Predator movie that I ever watched all the way through. So, yes, shock, I know. What horrible childhood I had playing video games and Legos all the time, not watching Predator. So I, of course, put up the formula, what we didn't like and what we did like. Now, of course, some might think, well, why not general discussion? Because you automatically love it, right? I don't. There are aspects of it that I liked. There are aspects of it that I thought worked. There are also aspects of it that it took creative liberties similarly to Prey. And I think having watched Prey first and Predator after, I honestly felt both movies together are worthwhile to watch. The biggest thing I didn't like, right out of the gate, I'll go ahead and get this one out there for you guys to think about and chew on, was the fact that we have it established the Predator plasma cannon is a super deadly, super accurate, just, you get touched with that thing, you're probably losing an arm. Unless you're the main character. Arnold takes a blast to the arm with the cannon, and he just kind of walks it off. and I felt that was definitely okay. It's an action movie. He's an action hero. Got it. No problem with that. It's just now I'm going to be looking at it not so much from the realism perspective, but the action star perspective, which I think is what we all ended up agreeing on with Prey was the case, was that it was also an action movie that took creative liberties. And so I thought that Predator did a lot of that same kind of thing. There was a lot of cool parts with the assault in the camp that they took, and a lot of the buildup was definitely more suspenseful, I would say. Felt a lot like the way that The Thing goes, which, by the way, is my personal favorite horror movie. John Carpenter's version, of course. And yeah, it wasn't without its flaws. And so I can see why people praise it. It's, for the time, there was a lot of cool effects that it brought to the screen that hadn't really been seen or executed in that way. Of course, some of them don't hold up as well over time, but that is what it is. They were working with the best that they had. And you could tell that they had a lot of fun making this movie. Some fan mail in the chat from R&D says the blast goes through his gun before hitting his arm. Look at it in slow-mo. You see the rifle break in 2 pieces. Okay, so we do have a point to consider.
Two things on that, on both of those. On your point about it being action and the main character survives. Plot armor. That's the one I was looking for. Plot armor. And then the other thing about it, the rifle being broken in half. I still think your point, Parker, is valid, though, because even though it does break the rifle in half, it punched like a sizable hole through the country bumpkin dude. Like, it was about a crater in his guts. And I think that means that even if it did hit the gun first, especially by 80s action logic, the entire thing should have exploded him, and he should have been like maybe a floating neck as he fell to the ground.
I mean, I could see some of the energy being absorbed.
The one thing that I noticed, because I was looking for it with the projectile weapons, is there is definitely some form of dissipating sphere in the center.
Oh.
There is an actual projectile. I don't know if it's just because they had to use like an arrow
for tracking
to, make the beam look real.
Yeah.
But that goes back to Prey, where he's using only magnetic slinging devices. This is before the plasma bolt. Like, the bolt itself is some form of unstable plasma core, which shot at high velocity can punch through things. And prior to that, it was just a bolt that could fire as fast as a gun without any sound.
Yeah, so in the making of videos for Predator, they've been several documentaries. The FX guys actually did use a arrow that was painted fluorescent to mark where everything was going.
Yeah,
so good catch, John. Look, there are some things that, look, is the dialogue cheesy by our standards today? Yeah, of course. Right? It's the 80s.
Oh, no, that's the part I love, though. I love to stick around.
The weird part is I wouldn't say it's cheesy because I think it directly created the way Marines talk.
Okay, fair enough.
It sounded just as dumb as most Marines that I've met.
Okay, fair enough.
And that technically makes it accurate as far as a military drama goes.
Yeah, but you know what I'm just saying, like, there is that technical part of it. Is there a little bit of hokiness in regards to how everything goes? Is the fact that, like...
Can you please read R&D's fan mail?
Oh, yeah. Get to the chopper!
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, is everything seemingly soaked in gasoline, so as soon as a spark gets near it, it catches fire in a huge fireball? Yeah, of course, right? That's the 80s. It was a simpler age, right? And considering that the movie's like 30 years old, basically, that's not too bad, really, when you consider it still fairly well holds up as a modern movie. I will say that they took just about to make this movie, they took just about every major action hero of that time, put them on the same team in like a weird expendable style format, and just pick them off one at a time like they're kids at a summer camp, right? Like it was, you know, in a lot of ways this was an experiment of, let's make an action movie, but let's take the tropes of a horror movie and put them in play. And there were scenes where that really does work. And a bunch of military dudes who are like, top tier operators, suddenly sitting there going, we are being hunted by something that is way superior to us, and this is a problem, is an interesting conundrum to be in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's an interesting scenario. It's just, like I said, the execution to today's eyes, it looks kind of hokey, but I mean, to me, it's still one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, no, and it's good on its own. It's still good, don't get me wrong. And I decided to just switch it to general discussion, because that's really what I should have opened with, because that's really my biggest complaint. And yes, so R&D, you do bring up a good point that it did hit the gun, but my problem is, it was like he was nursing and babying it for like one scene, and then it's back to, oh, it's fine. I'll just walk it off, I'm good, I'm Schwarzenegger, and it's like, all right, that's acceptable, it's an action movie. However, I just don't see the hatred for Prey. After watching both movies, I'm like, because Prey still follows the formula of Predator. It just does it a little differently, and they set it back in time 300 years. But I felt both movies, watching Prey first and then watching Predator, that Prey works. It doesn't change anything. It respects the canon. It tells a different story, but it's kind of the same. It's just, this is why the Predator ends up being more aggressive the next time around, because they learn from the one 300 years ago from its mistakes. And so this new one comes and shows up, and it's like, well, now I'm better armed and I'm better equipped to handle with tier 1 operators, and that's why the tier 1 operators go down so easily. And then eventually, I did like how the ending, I liked how both of them ended similar. They lured the thing into a trap to overcome it. I thought that was great. So I do agree that people saying Prey is better are kind of overstepping their if you like it better, that's one thing, but I'd say objectively both movies are about on the same scale with each other. It's just this one's, Prey is a 2022 action movie, and this was an 80s action movie. They're both action movies, they're both Predator movies, and I enjoyed them both equally. But I come from a unique point of view in that I didn't see the first Predator, so that changes my perspective significantly.
Yeah, I think part of it might actually boil down to, do you have nostalgia for the original, or don't you? If you do, then you probably think the original is superior. If you don't, you can probably see the merits of both, right? And if if this is your first exposure to the Predator movie franchise, you might think that this is the greatest movie since Prey is the greatest movie since sliced bread, right? I mean,
I thought Prey was okay. I mean, I didn't think it was like the greatest movie ever.
That's actually something that I learned today. So I loved Prey from the moment I started watching it. It was the exact kind of for this Prey was like the first one that didn't feel like a horror Predator.
Okay.
Like every other Predator seems like it is very much trying to scare you. And first time viewing Predator, it was very scary. Like as a child, I did not enjoy it. And by child, I mean I was probably like 13. And so for me, it was one of those horror movies that you have to watch during the day with the lights on, and it's terrifying. And now rewatching it, I was laughing at all the things that used to scare me. It's 100% snap cuts, silent times, momentary breathing, that ominous, and watching it while working really showed me how laughable all that stuff is in the context of 80s graphics. You would watch the Predator's light thing come on, or his HUD, and you're just that's so slow. He would die every single time he tried to target anything moving, because that thing's like, and then you see the heat outline of what he's targeting. It's like, that dude's dead. No reticle. That ADS speed is done, right? And whereas Prey, you watch it and it's like, right? But that's the graphics. But at the same time, rewatching the movie, the story still holds up.
Yeah.
Watching it and watching Prey, you don't feel like Prey betrayed the Predator and changed the outcome of the Predator. Like when you watch Strange New Worlds or when you watch J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, it changes everything that came before it that's technically supposed to come after these new movies and series.
Yeah.
But in Prey, it followed the rules and just changed the technology. Like if anything, all we saw was a degradation of technology, which coincides with the timeline. And that was
Well, see,
crazy,
I don't,
especially in the modern times. But that's if we like. This really depends on it. If we include all the other lore that we've learned from AVP, but then if we if we include
well,
AVP,
okay, hold
do we
on.
include
The-
Prometheus, and if we include Prometheus, do we include the second Prometheus one? And if we include those two, they already break AVP, because AVP says that the whole universe or the whole Earth was set up as a predator hunting ground, with predators being the ones that gave humans technology. But we don't see the first alien until Prometheus. But Prometheus starts because of the events of AVP, and Wayland Corp is the one that actually invented the alien.
So what you're saying is the timeline of this universe makes zero sense, and
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
Except in
Look,
Prey and Predator, it makes perfect sense. It works.
well, hold on. It really depends on what you consider to be the more advanced weapons platform. Okay, and I'm going to make the argument here.
Okay.
Because plasma weapon, yes, it's an energy-based weapon. In theory, if you're got a decent power pack, it's never running out of juice. You can just fire that thing with reckless abandon. That homing, smart fire, basically flying sword, dagger, railroad spike system that he had.
Homing dart.
Yeah, well, but this is the thing. It
wasn't a
changes
homing dart,
direction.
it was a laser reticle.
Okay,
Like it followed the reticle.
right, but here's the thing. That dart, I'm gonna call it a railroad spike because that's what it felt like. That railroad
Guidance.
spike changes, does hard turns, right?
Yeah,
I would
did.
argue-
I did not like that.
Well, I would argue that that's the superior weapon system.
Yeah, I would too, because if we think about that, just about darts, the dart from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, the
that
arrow.
thing,
Yeah,
it's so fast, it's silent, and it doesn't degrade. As it punctures things, it doesn't lose any speed. And same with this dart, is it literally can horseshoe, do a 90-degree turn without losing any velocity. That's beyond the best weapon. Which, if we think about weapons and the reality of them, there's your government issue, and then there's your special crafted, I've been buying each independent piece for myself, and this is what I like to use, which throws in this whole, if anything, it expands the lore of the Predators in terms of their arsenal. Some of them are going to be bow hunters in a time of plasma rifles.
Well, and then there's the other. I just figured it out, though. Because Corion, you're right. This is, this does seem like a seemingly more advanced technology. But I think I could figure out why they would go to the plasma bolt that just shoots straight and only lands on the target. And I think it's because the last guy to use the homing dart system got himself
in the
killed
head.
with it. So their weapon could be used against them. And instead, they wanted a cannon that couldn't be used against them.
yeah. I mean, if they picked up the black
to mention-
box from that Predator or something, I'll give you that. Or even better, they realized that
We never saw
mirrors
it
were going to
ship.
be a serious problem, right?
Right? Yeah.
Not to mention the other aspect of both of those thoughts is that the biggest thing in Predator 2 is that he keeps collecting predator medals and then ends up getting the predator disc and knows that it's the best weapon he's ever held in his hands because it cuts through predators, whereas like his shotgun loaded with slugs,
It
took
annoys
7
him.
shots.
Yeah.
Oh no, it punctured him. That's where in Predator 2, that was the thing that got the predator to fall over.
Yeah.
Is this like several just all to the chest, and you see the predator's blood. It's like trickling. He couldn't even break an artery, and that is like, but that demonstrates more to like why the predators clean up after themselves. Our metal punctures our skin. We're not going to collect, like we're not going to leave this behind. Why do we stop using darts? Well, that's a ton of stuff to clean up. Like there's that's such an awesome reality though. Like that gives testament to Prey, because Prey, it was getting bashed as this movie that didn't respect anything and just brought in another Mary Sue. But then it turns out that it literally expanded the lore in ways that none of us ever thought to. Like, what is the armory? Because the plasma cannon is good enough. Well, what were the other iterations? It doesn't matter. The plasma cannon's good enough. Like, Prey's now like, well, here's some other iterations. And now suddenly we're all like, well, actually, I could see why they got rid of this one, even though it's better.
So we got a little bit of fan mail here. R&A, something to note about Prey. The fact that the girl got handed the 1715 pistol implies the predators came back, slaughtered everyone, and took the pistol back. And you know what? I would even argue that they had to come back, because they had to come back and get his body.
Yep.
I would even argue, according to Predator 2 logic, he wasn't the only predator on the island, like on the planet.
At the time.
Exactly, because according to Predators 2, there's people in the ship still.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that plays a major role in those events. Does anybody know when Roanoke, off the top of their head, was the Roanoke colony disappeared?
Oh, I was just dealing with that a little while ago. I think it would have been in like 2 or 3 years from 1715. Like it was around that time, if I remember correctly.
Oh no, it looks like 1587.
Oh, was it?
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking this next one. So
that would be so good.
This is the hard part about all the timelines, is apparently according to the like ancient subterranean structure in AVP, their ritual was every 100 years. But at one point, they lost to the aliens, and because they lost, all of humanity was wiped out, and that's what killed, the ancient aliens world. And then from there, the rituals kicked back up sometime after humanity kicked back up to a certain degree. And that to me makes this whole like connection to the Predator universe as similar, like a lot closer to different nature preserves, but also still tracks with the Prometheans being better than the Predators, because like they are the ones that started life on Earth. According to Prometheus, they're the ones that started life on Earth, and then whatever life on Earth that was here, the Predators were like, oh, we can use this life to create this other life that we have, and then we can use this other life to hunt, and we have stakes.
Yeah.
And these stakes make it important. And then they lost, and so that that's where it seems like they dramatically lost the stakes. And it seems kind of like that, whatever happened in that, because it's all like they read it through the like inscriptions on the tunnels. That seems to be like a perfect justification for the General Order 1 in Star Trek and stuff like that. The idea that first contact needs to be handled with people of sufficient technology, because the Predators were like, yeah, it's a nature preserve, we'll come back and visit and hunt here, and like we'll have this machine set up to create the thing we want to hunt, and that's how it's going to go. But then it went so bad they erased a race. And so they now they've learned from that. Now they send in parties and they don't even start the aliens anymore. And they're trying to get rid of whatever version of predators put the aliens everywhere.
No, it's getting back to the movie Predator, like the first one. There are some absolutely just dynamite moments in that movie where you just
Literally.
well, yeah, but there's just moments that sit with everybody, and I'd be curious to hear what your guys are. I'm gonna go with mine though. I've always felt that, for example, that since Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse Ventura both went into politics, they should have run as president and vice president. On the basis that in a steel cage match, the United States would win handedly. But, but
I mean, you're right, but yeah.
Yeah, but my favorite moment in the movie is when Jesse Ventura just unloads into the jungle with that minigun and just effectively creates a landing strip in the middle of nowhere by just taking everything out in that area, and they still don't manage to hit the predator. To me, that was just one of those perfect moments.
Wait,
and I'd love to hear what your guys are.
I'm just trying to figure out what. Sorry, I'm gonna need to pull up the IMDb to clarify a couple of things because I
Jesse
thought
Ventura didn't actually do that scene.
I thought it was
Mac,
the.
and that was
Oh, is
after
it Mac?
Jesse Ventura
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Oh, right. That's right.
Yeah, Crazy Man, as I called him on my live commentary in the Discord. That scene I did like because yes, it does establish you're not hitting this thing, and it really does bolster. But I also I loved how I could relate to that because that's literally what me and my Super Gamecraft do anytime there's a stealth mission in Grand Theft Auto Online, because it's if you have the option in a stealth mission to just go hot in that game, we always option. Oh no, we're going hot. It's so yeah, I love putting those gifs in. That's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it actually reminded me of the game XCOM. Because there are mission in the XCOM 2, the latest one that came out, you're effectively playing as the insurgent force trying to dislodge the aliens from Earth. And there are moments where I've got my team set up to go take down this one alien dude. And my guy will start it off, he'll fire a shot at the creature, and the dude will blink out, but not before my entire squad has completely carpet bombed the building that guy was in. So there's nothing left of the building, and the one alien has jumped himself out of the building through a window and escaped. And we're all sitting there going, well, that was a colossal waste of ammo. All right, let's load up and get ready again.
But I see that scene though really showed off quite a few things. One, it showed off battle tactics. You watch everybody come in and stand on the flank. Nobody comes in shooting from the side and actually hits anybody. Nobody starts shooting until they're online with everybody up. But then also they still hadn't realized that the predator was using the trees to his advantage. And so they never thought to aim up. And I think that's that's a sign of good writing. There's those 80s action moments that don't make sense. There's plot armor for sure. But there's also they followed their own rules. They haven't figured out the sky yet, so they're not going to shoot into the sky. Whereas I think his name was Billy, their tracker, he noticed that they were shooting in all directions, whereas we saw them putting one for focus of fire. And I think what he meant by all directions was they were literally spinning the trees. So there's little hints that they're shooting there's something in the trees, and even Billy goes, there's something there in the trees, and you see him not see what he's looking at. He never looks directly at the predators when it's looking through the predator's head, but you see Billy knowing that something's off about the way the tree is moving in the wind. It's moving and there's no wind, and that all of these things really point to the writer's ability to effectively create like Dungeons and Dragons style teams where like each character has their role and they may not get to express the all-out power of that role, but the writers took the time to explain it to themselves. They took the time to like establish this so that every scene makes sense according to each character rather than the characters coming off like they don't matter. And I think that's something that Prey did as well. And I think like the coolest thing about going back and watching Predators, especially after just watching Prey, is that not Predators, but Predator.
I was gonna say
It created an entire universe that makes fun sense. Like it is its own version of Marvel, especially because they've combined in the aliens. So like we've got a much slower Marvel closer to the Expanse.
Yeah.
And that, or I mean, even closer, it's like the closest one would be Halo, where the Prometheans are the High Runners, or the
Forerunners.
The oh man, what's their name? The Predators would probably be closer to the Covenant, and then the Alien would be the Flood.
Yep.
Like these tropes, while they are tropes, they can all tell completely different stories, and look at how fun each one is. And I think what Prey did, if anything, is it just revitalized the entire franchise for me. Like I now want to see more 2022 quality on a 1980s classic. I want that story to stay because Prey did it right. So it does work. And then going back and watching Predator after Prey, it still works. So like, let's keep all of the things from everything. Let's keep the macho guys that are way too big for their like uniforms. Let's keep the young, nimble female warrior who knows how to outwit an opponent rather than supposedly has the strength of 20 men.
Yeah.
Like that combined really makes for a fun story. And give me more Predator tech. Give me more Predator lore. Give me more of this because it's so cool. And who cares if it's like accurate to the reality of the universe, but at the very least, make it accurate to itself.
Yeah.
Maintain its accuracy like you have so far.
Well, I mean, in some ways we are getting that too, though, right? I mean, we just recently got Denis Villeneuve's Dune, which was, I would argue, a fantastic update to the Dune franchise. You know,
I wasn't
we are
even
getting some of these.
I wasn't even bored during the slow moments of Dune. Like that's how good it was it was the art. And that's where I would say Prey does strongly in. Like some of the slow going establishing shots I think were absolutely necessary into helping Prey stand out, because that is one thing I did notice that Predator felt, and this is probably going to sound silly, but this is honestly my feelings about the movie. Predator felt a little claustrophobic. Now, maybe that's the point. You're in a thick jungle. You're supposed to kind of feel like you might be contained in an area. It's not, not a whole lot of room to move. And that's what I think Prey shines, is because having those big establishing shots of the area and the environment, while they're also pretty to look at, it also shows like this is the open wilderness that they lived in. This is the air, this helps establish the zone a lot better. I just feel like maybe if we had, what I wanted was like an aerial shot, not necessarily a zoom in, zoom out, which would work too, but just something to establish just how far deep in the jungle they had gone from their base camp at the edge of the water. Like that's what I just wanted to have, like, okay, like how screwed are these guys? Is basically what I was looking for.
I get you. I think you're gonna get some of that with the second Predator movie.
Okay.
When you take the chance to watch it.
Yeah, and the second Predator movie is a lot more like a cop drama overlaid with Predator. And it's like, it makes sense. It works. It's kind of like what you were saying earlier, Corian. It's like the original Predator was closer to like what if a bunch of like a camping trip was actually a group of tier 1 operators and they're running from Jason Voorhees. Like, how does that play out? And that's like Predator 1, whereas Predator 2 is like cop drama, but Jason Voorhees is a predator in LA. And I think I don't think that Predator needs the establishing shots because I think it actually works even if it wasn't intended. Like I assume it was probably due to some like budgetary restrictions, but like the claustrophobia of the jungle is actually like how, I mean, I personally felt whenever I was in the jungle. Like, it doesn't matter if you have 10 miles to run in either direction. There's probably a giant snake or a spider 10 feet from your foot, and you can't see it.
And that's why I will live in the desert.
What like Predator made sense is like, there is a guy standing over you on a branch, and you can't see him. And whether he has cloak or not, it's the jungle. He could be completely covered.
Yeah, PD, I understand you're liking the desert, but camel spiders, dude.
Not that desert. I'm talking about the Idaho desert. Yes, we have wolf spiders and rattlers, but the wolf spiders and rattlers usually know to keep in their habitats and not come, to human place. Whereas, like a place like Australia, for example, the animals still think they occupy the land by themselves. Anyway.
Yeah, I see. Now that would be the ultimate Predator movie. You need a Predator movie set in Australia where the animals wind up killing the Predator.
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes along with what I'm saying. What I'm about to say, though.
An emu gets the final hit because Australia's only war with animals was lost to the emus.
Yeah, exactly.
So, building on what John brought up, because now you've actually segued the conversation to this direction with what you were saying. I would fan mail from RN Day. In Australia, spiders are big enough to have a health bar. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. I've
looked at the bird-eating spiders, and I'm like, anyway. I guess the scenery is just nice on some of those beach fronts. So going off what you're saying, John, I think that would actually be, and as a consumer of product myself, I just want to say that for the next Predator Prey movie, I think you should take aspects of both the original and Prey and give us a 2022 era Predator film that has this team of masculine men and heroic feminine warriors. And, you can play up the whole
that's
toxic
what Predators did.
Femininity, toxic masculinity. No, I haven't. But I also heard Predators sucked.
Predators. I thought it was so fun. Okay,
Predators is a unique concept. The basic premise is, instead of fighting humans on Earth, they abduct a bunch of humans and put them on a game world.
Yeah, I hate it.
Well, no.
Based off of that description, I'm like, no.
No. So let's take all the versions of Predators we've had so far. We've had Predator in the jungle, where it's tier 1 operators versus a Predator on a jungle. Nobody has home court advantage. Then we have Predators 2. It's a Predator in LA, where like being invisible is super easy when you can jump to the top of buildings or climb buildings with your bare hands. Like no human can do that. Even though we can ride an elevator, we can't get to the top that fast. Then you have AVP, where it's like there's this long historical legacy of the hunt. And then we have AVP Requiem, where it's this botched, where they supposedly ended this arbitrary hunt that they've been trying to end. But then it continued because they didn't end it entirely with the alien popping out of the Predator's chest at the end of the movie, and then so that plane or that ship then crashes right back on Earth, restarting the annihilation of the alien hunt. And then Predators after AVP Requiem is like, okay, so we're not going to keep risking the entire human population just because like we have some understanding of the importance of letting species evolve to their maximum potential, and if we wipe them out, we lose a lot of potential resources and information that they could create. And so the Preserve is like their clean version of hunting the deadliest prey. And so the people that they choose are all people on the verge of death or already on death row. And so they bring in all of these people that are already tier 1 operators, but also 100% going to be missed or not going to be missed.
Well, and I'll give you an example. Like some of the characters that they bring in is they bring in, like a tier 1 operator who's gone mercenary. They bring in a member of the Yakuza. They bring in this woman that
She's a tier 1 operator of some. I want to say.
Yeah, she's a tier 1
Grenada.
operator in like Grenada. She's like a freedom fighter somewhere. Oh, and they bring in a doctor
No,
because he
it's
had
not
a
doctor.
well, he claims.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to ruin the movie, but for this conversation, we probably should just like your best.
Yeah, he's a doctor, but he's actually a sociopath, right?
He's a serial killer.
What
Yeah,
doctor
like
is
he-
it?
A well-documented serial killer, according to like he explains it to the Grenada. She's some form of SF Special Forces and still enlisted. And so like that, she's the only one with a moral compass, whereas everybody else has major reasons to not have one. And her moral compass gets her in trouble with the doctor when the doctor explains that like you all thought I was just some schmuck that just accidentally ended up with you, but I've been killing people for years and nobody's ever even once looked at me. And then suddenly like that's where you see that like the predators didn't choose willy-nilly. They chose people with the highest kill counts.
They chose predators.
Exactly. And so then the idea of predators on Predator Planet makes suddenly like it works as an escalation of everything we've seen before. And then I don't remember what the newest Predators was called, but the one where it's back to kind of being like Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And that one's this whole idea of predators feeling remorse for all their predating. And now one of them is trying to like equip the humans. So, like, I really like this turn back to prey because that sucks. Like that ruins the whole ideology of the predators. It ruins all of their backstory. If like they literally have just one slight morality difference and then suddenly they're going to equip humans with predator tech, like no, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't match where they've been. Like even if they did want to save humanity, all they would do is spend all their time deleting Earth from the records. Not trying to equip one human with predator gear.
So we've talked about the future of the franchise a little bit, and we've been dancing around it a little bit. What would your next Predator film, what would your ideal one be?
So as I was saying, ideally I would take both Prey and Predator and I would try to use both stories, and that's basically what I do. And yeah, you could either set it in 2022 or you could try setting it, you know, maybe we could do something a little different and go into the future and then separate it from the I don't like combining the Aliens universe into the Predator personally. I think that those can exist. Those ideas should exist as separate universes. So we can have a universe where Prey, Predator, Predator 2, Predators, and Alien versus Predator exist. And then we can have the primary universe where Prey, Predator, and Predator 2 exist. And then we go from there. And that's how I would reboot the series. Is just.
So here's my elevator pitch for a Predator movie. Okay.
2 minutes, go.
Yep. I want to do a Predator movie where we are actually in a future where our tech is parity, but it comes purely down to skill. It comes down to the humans have to, one, realize they are being hunted, and then two, have to deal with something that is just that much better a hunter. And the technology isn't what's terrifying here. It's the skill of the individuals involved. I think that could be a fascinating way to take it because we've gone far back. We've gone to modern day. Let's go to the future. It's the next logical progression.
Okay, so here's my idea based off of your two ideas. A combo 2-part experience. Part 1 is the humans finally finding some semblance of the Predator reserve through space flight. Like they have finally started, like you said, matching their all the Predator tech that they've collected. They finally started like open source research and development. Humans have finally made space tech. They're faster than light travel. They get to this experience like with the Predators. the predators find out that they're for the first time actually being hunted. Like one of the subservient races made it and is now trying to go toe to toe with them. And so now we see the true reason behind their evolution. Like they've been it's been well established that they're evolution chasers. Like they want to evolve faster than any other race. Why? Well, once we show up in numbers versus theirs, they still win in that like one Spartan's worth 300 Greek Thermopylans. And that could be one half. And then the second half is that battle results in some form of time slip, sending them back to the start, starting the whole Predator on Earth fight. Like the humans race back to Earth, not knowing that they traveled through time. The Predators are chasing them, same thing, not knowing. And that's how we resolve all the incongruities, because like everything that's happened from Prometheus and Aliens versus Predators and all of that started with humans meeting the Predators getting the humans to run away. The humans get to Earth, find out they're stuck in time, but the Predators finally are like, all right, we acknowledge that you guys did this, so we're going to give you this planet, but every 100 years we're going to come back. And here's this doomsday device that we put on your planet. So if you don't sacrifice to us, it'll kill you all. But if you do sacrifice to us, we get to train hunters. And all the while, the humans, like, there can be this whole, like, messing with everybody's head, saying that they didn't travel back in time. But in reality, they're back on Earth, building the ancient pyramids, doing all of this ancient civilization. And then this whole idea of, like, where did language go? Like if we all spoke the same one, well, it's all because we all came in here on the same ship. Then we all started spreading out. Then we all started speaking different slang. Then that slang became separate languages. And suddenly, like, we have this full circle for the whole Predator series to then spin into whatever direction for any subsequent movie. Like it could be the Spartan times. It could be the pirate times. And you could then just start sprinkling in Predator attacks every 100 years since that first visitation. And that would, to me, that would springboard the series into a full, like, never-ending series.
So we could set it in like the Battlestar Galactica universe, basically?
Yeah, that works. Because, like, that seems to be what's going to happen as far as the human timeline goes. Once we can explore space, we will explore space. If we have a reason to chase something in space, that's going to be our first point of exploration. Once we get there, something could happen. That thing that could happen could mess with the space-time continuum. That messing with the space-time continuum could trick us into thinking we're just resettling a new planet, but in reality, we're settling Earth for the first time. And then that way you don't have to constantly like invent new aliens, like flora and fauna and all that stuff. You can still just go to the Egyptian desert and film and say like, it's a desert, but it looks nothing like Earth. And it's like, no, it's just an Earth desert without any buildings. Haven't been built yet.
See, now I want Cylons versus Predator.
Oh my god.
That's sick, because that's kind of what the Wayland AI is becoming. Like his whole justification for like propagating the evolution of the alien was because he realized that biologicals shouldn't exist. So what does he do? He finally creates he works with biologicals to create more of himself, and then now the Cylons are being sent out. But like that's how big the universe is if we combine everything. If we start cutting out pieces, it very quickly becomes just a continuation of Friday the 13th. And the deaths don't mean anything. We know that once the movie starts, the Predator dies. But if we make it this other thing where like it's a well-established ritual that the Predators are going to be here every 100 years, well, why don't we know anything about them between 1700 and like when it started? Because they always won.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it's like the only movies that we see are the ones where they lose, right?
Exactly. So like that way we don't break the storytelling element of like how does nobody know that this thing exists, but we also don't have to keep explaining why we don't know this thing exists.
Oh, and R&Day, all of this has happened before and will happen again. Yes. Excellent.
Yeah. That's
You know,
yeah, I just think that for me, I'd want to take advantage of the current era, and I'd want to present, have a couple of characters, one representing the toxic male stereotype, the other representing the toxic female stereotype, and then having all manners of variation in between. And then it basically starts out where, they're bickering, they don't get along, but then to overcome and defeat the predator or whatever situation it is, whether it's through time, whether it's, how it's in the future, basically have the entire premise go that, no, we shouldn't be competing for who's better at what. It's a team game, guys. We need to be working together, and I think that's really the message I want to start seeing more of. That's why I loved Peacemaker. Peacemaker did this in the best possible way, and that's why I'm so excited for whatever season 2 rolls out. And those are the types of stories that I think are great, because then everybody wins. Everybody gets a win. Everybody can relate to it on some level, and it just stands as a continued reminder that our differences shouldn't be nitpicked or belittled one way or the other. It's our differences that make us great as a species. So
yeah,
that's the story I want to see. Is
that, I mean, and that's kind of the story we've always seen with predators. Like, even in Predator, at one point, Arnie cuts the bonds off the girl and says, "She's hunting all of us. Like, you shouldn't be crippled at the knees just because we need to capture you. Like, you need to be able to play too."
Oh yeah,
and
you want to talk about a movie that's got a diverse cast like that? I was like,
not
wow,
only a
this
diverse
was ahead of its time.
A diverse cast within the reality of its society. Like, Jesse Ventura, I noticed this because at one Mac, the guy who picks up the gun from Jesse Ventura's character, is also a black dude, and they're like best friends. But at the beginning of the movie, Ventura spits on the other black dude's shoes, and you think it's like a race thing. But once I saw that like switch, it realized, no, that's an interbranch thing. He hates CIA every single time. And I love that. Like, there was no context, there was no explanation, there was no Karen that jumped in and said, "Did you just spit on his shoes because he's black?" No, I did it because he's in the CIA. Well, thanks for breaking the immersion, Karen. Like, there was none of that. You had to, like, I had to figure that out. By watching these people live, and I loved that.
Yeah, it was. And that's what I liked it too, was, the movie was trying to warn us of the CIA, a long time ago.
Well, it came out basically after the whole Iran-Contra stuff started happening, right? So, there was a context for CIA malfeasance, shall we say.
This is at 87. I was -4, so.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That's
how this one just.
Fair enough.
But and then the second one was right in line with the Rodney King race riots, and like, it's not that they they didn't downplay anything. If anything, they just said, like, this is what happens if it goes unchecked for a little bit longer. It gets worse.
Because I was
and
gonna say
the cartel is taking over LA.
The Rodney King riots weren't until 92, so yeah.
I think this didn't Predator 2 come out? Was it 89?
Predators or Predator 2? Was it 89?
I'm pretty sure it was 89.
Oh, you said 2 was. Sorry, I thought you were still speaking about this one. I misheard you. That's my bad. Like I said, overall, great movie. Like I said, I rated it a 5 out of 7. It is an action movie, not without its flaws. It's not, for me personally, it's not really something that I'm gonna watch often, just because it's not. My type of movie is Star Trek and Star Wars. Those have always been my thing, and those will always be my thing primarily. So, it isn't just that I didn't watch it because I had overprotective parents. It was also I didn't watch it because it's just the type of movie that doesn't. It's an action movie. I like it for the action, but it's not a masterpiece. I mean, it's good. It's just not.
for me, we had overprotective parents for sure. But as I got older, I kind of became really grateful because horror movies legitimately scare me. And so the protection was there. I was protected from watching horror movies, but like our parents weren't to the point that like, no, that's a demon movie that's going to infect your mind. It was more like, no, it's just a bad movie. There are things in it that are bad. You know, like murdering and ripping people's skins off.
Yeah,
That's
we really don't need to see
bad
skinned
thing.
humans. Yeah,
Right?
Before you're
same
like
time,
13,
like-
that's not really something you need to be subjected to.
Exactly. And I think that's, to me, like my whole idea for the future of the series is how do we get it to the Star Trek, Star Wars universe? Because the things that I love about Star Trek and Star Wars is the different planets with different species doing different things differently. And that's what I love about this series is it's a very naturally progressive way for humans to have a greater than us reason to go out. Like, what if the next Predator movie is a continuation, like a 2022 version of Predator, where all of it is caught on social media? The whole experience is very obvious. There's no getting like protecting it. The media talks way too much about it for way too long. So every human on Earth is now 100% sure there are aliens out there and they are predators and they are coming for the strongest among us, which then now we start episode like this movie that now we like the way that movie to me would end is that the Earth space race is no longer Russia versus America, China versus Russia versus America. It is humans versus predators. How do we stop this fight?
That would be the basis for a fantastic TV series, I think, because
Right?
you could even take it into places of, you know, hysteria and some serial killer trying to take advantage of the situation. Like, there's a lot of places you could go with a threat like that. But we do have some fan mail here. R&D, same. Star Wars, Willow, Cocoon, Explorers, Indiana Jones, batteries not included. I guess I'm a sucker for wonder. Yeah, I mean, honestly,
That explains why you're here.
yeah. Now, personally, I give this movie a 6 out of 7, but that is because I am a huge Arnold fan. He is from the same family or the same village my family is from. There's a huge connection there. I friggin' love every movie that he is in, including like the really bad and stupid ones.
Jingle all
Because,
the way.
oh yeah, right?
Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
Hey, Last Action Hero is awesome.
Oh,
Well-
some of them are bad, man. I mean, but they're wonderful in their terribleness is the only way I can describe it.
Last
And-
Action Hero is basically a meta movie for the fan mail that R&A wrote in. Like,
Yeah.
that's exactly, it's a little bit more grounded in the actiony sense, but that's exactly like, how many times have you gone to a theater and wished you had a magic ticket? Just about every time for me. Like, Star Wars, Star Trek, you know, and I'm in there in the theater, it's like, man, I wish this experience was going to be more than 2.5 hours.
Yeah. But
And
yeah,
for
so
me-
that's where I'm at with it. John, let's get your score here and then go for it, man.
This is partially why I brought up the schedule in our internal chat, or not the schedule, but the grading scale in our internal chat. This is 100% the definition of a 7 out of 7, based off of the time it was written, based off of how it played then and how it plays today. It still tracks in terms of good storytelling, but even better, it actually did create an entire franchise that
Yep.
led to so many other franchises that all intertwine and still work for the most part. And that is what an A+ movie does. And A+ content is what we keep trying to recreate, trying to bring back for nostalgia. But in reality, like, we know what they're doing. It's for marketing. It worked then, it should work now. Why did it work then? We don't know. We're just going to write a new Star Wars. Like, Prey is exactly what you're supposed to do. Find out why it worked and then do that. You want to change up characters? Make sure you don't set it at the exact same time as all those other characters are operating. You want to change up roles? Make sure It all fits. You want to change technology? Make sure it tracks. Like, all of these things are the things that Prey did, and therefore Predator has to be a 7 out of 7 because Prey was a 6 out of 7.
For you, it was a 5 out of 7
for me. Right, 5 out of 7 for you guys. But if Prey gets anything above a 4, which is like, it was a good movie, it was worth watching.
At least once.
That means that it has to come from somewhere because it is a revitalization. It's I forget what the word is. It's trying to bring back everything that Predator created. And then it did that so much to a level that like you can give it a 5 or I can give it a 6. And that means that the 7 out of 7 had to be there somewhere. Like in the case of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back is the 7 out of 7 that created everything afterwards. Because without Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars doesn't make any sense. Luke was training, saw Vader, then fights Vader and wins. Cool. We have a Mary Sue male actor. But if you put 5 in there where he loses and goes to the abyss, suddenly we have a wholly rounded character going through a journey. And that I think is exactly what we have with Predators, is every movie after Predator is still good, and Prey being that Predator, following all the rules of Predator, was good. So it has to be a solid, it stands on its own as a story structure. You can use the movie Predator and write a good movie, whether it's in 87 or in 2022.
Yeah, see, and that's where I disagree, is the fact that there are better movies in the 80s that I could even just, like, you know, if we're just kind of doing a general comparison, you know, Wrath of Khan is much better written, better dialogue, for example.
And look at how big Star Trek is. And look at how big Back to the Future was. Like, Back to the Future only ended because of Michael J. Fox's medical disability.
No, it ended because after 3, Robert Zemeckis said he was done, and that's going to be it for the show, or for the series.
Okay, so then there's a logical explanation for its end. Whereas, like, Star Wars, with this newest sequel, everything that was laid out for it and everything that it tried to follow along, it tried to meet the beats, but then it didn't. You lied. Who lied, Arende? I exaggerate.
Yes, in Wrath of Khan, one of the best lines.
There we go.
Yeah.
I exaggerated. Yeah, but see, that's my point, though, is there's the drawbacks for me in Predator.
Franchise is with them.
I mean, I understand your point coming from the success of the franchise, but I don't think you need a 7 movie to do that. And that's my point, is that it's still a 5 out of 7 for me because it, like I said, big drawbacks. Arnold's gun gets blown up and he just kind of walks off his arm injury like it's nothing. He's using it normal again. And that's where Prey did it decently, was they showed injury and it stuck with them. They didn't just magically walk off the pain. Which, don't get me wrong, I'd love to be able to do that. It's just not realistic. So yes, I do have this problem, so to speak, when it comes to action movies, where I do gauge them a lot based off of realism. And I'm the same, you know, my fun at parties mentality comes out even when I'm watching Futurama and they're doing ridiculously stupid stuff, and I'm just like, no, that's not. Anyway, but that's just it. I don't have those problems with Back to the Future or with Star Trek 2 as examples. But again, this is broad stroke comparison. Obviously Star Trek is sci-fi and it's futuristic sci-fi. Back to the Future is a little more grounded, even though they have the one where they do go to the future, which is now the past. And it's just
Predator's sci-fi as well.
Predator is sci-fi, but it's considerably more grounded. It's sci-fi in the sense that it tries to be realistic by introducing an alien element, but it's not like so alien like the Force, for example. It's just another creature that's fighting humans, and so it's very basic, is what I'm trying to say.
For its time, it was borderline Force. I mean, they're using plasma guns. We still have yet to even perfect the plasma laser in a handheld.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I would argue this. I would actually argue that the Predator franchise fits a very unique section of horror called the horror of the uncanny. Okay. So you have your slasher films, which are like your Jasons, your Freddys, that sort of thing. You have your jump scare horror, which I would say is kind of like a little bit of Saw, right? Like where it's mostly jump scare stuff.
Oh, I always
And then-
saw as gore porn, but
Poltergeist.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the later ones, I'll agree. But
okay, fair enough.
then you have the fear of the uncanny, or the kind of horror movies that sit with you days or weeks later going, yeah, that's kind of terrifying when I stop to think about it.
Like what we're going to talk about in Terminalist here soon.
Yeah, it's like H.P. Lovecraft level stuff, right? Like, when you think about, like the Call of Cthulhu, you're like, okay, so it's a giant, octopus with bat wings that could probably eat me or anyone it came across, and even looking at it causes madness. Okay. But then you start really thinking about why looking at it causes madness, and it's because it's just so far beyond your comprehension that you just can't handle it. And that's a terrifying thought for a human being, because just about everything we deal with most of the time, at some level we can handle. The Predator is kind of like that, right? Like, it is so far beyond our capability to deal with. And it's literally hunting us for sport because, from our perspective, it's hunting us because it's bored, right? That's a terrifying thought, right? The further terrifying thoughts we've brought up that, well, they're keeping us as a garden, like a game preserve to hunt in, is a terrifying thought. And that's why I think it neatly fits into that unique area of horror where you only get one or two movies like this. Like The Thing was another one that fits very neatly into that uncanny style horror.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
I think especially in the case of the Predator, it's not just hunting us. Like, you or I are probably never going to be on the list of, fun opponents for the Predator. It's picking an eye that we hope to protect us. The ones that make it so we can sleep peaceably at night. That's the one it considers a worthy opponent. And that is so much more terrifying. Like, it's so far advanced that its bored version of fun is hunting our most expert killers.
Yeah.
So I will capitulate, John, if I quickly put on the lenses of 80s nostalgia here. And yes, it does tick off all the tropes. So as an 80s nostalgia movie, it definitely works for that. But that's also where I have my problems with it. And that's where, because I'm looking at this not as a movie or a product of its time, but also just as a movie in general. And some of the cheesy dialogue, while entertaining, and some of the other like I said, it's an action
that's why
movie.
I bring it up for its time, because it's kind of like if you
I also don't
judge
have
if you judge a writer based off his peers, then that's one objective scale. Like, there were a ton of terrible 80s movies that never deserved a sequel, and I don't even have any to name off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Because, like, the 80s to me is already a dead series of movies. Like, pretty much anything that came out of the 80s. The only reason I watched Predator
Stranger
was
Things,
for
and
this
the
show.
Stranger Things fanboys would disagree, but go on.
I don't know. There's a lot of them I can think of.
It was written by the kids that lived in the 80s. Like, now they grew up, and now they're writing about their childhood in 2022 with 2022 cameras. And that's why I say, like, you judge it based off the peers rather than judging it based off of what we now consider good writing, because especially in terms of movies, it took a long time for them to figure out that they could twist at us in drama. They could confuse us the entire movie and write an Inception. Like, that took all of the history of film before Inception came to be.
Yeah,
Even
but
Alfred Hitchcock was writing really, really weak horror by today's standards.
Okay, but that's also
So
why
if we try to judge Predators based off of what we know to be good today, but it was written based off what they knew to be good then,
it wasn't.
yet it still tracks today, it's really good.
But that's not true. I gave a couple examples
Right.
better writing
But you
that
gave
we see in Back to the
examples
Future
of
and Star
tried and
Trek.
true writers nailing it. Like Back to the Future is definitely a one-off, but there's a bunch of complaints. Why did he go back to his hometown? Why is there no other plan for getting enriched uranium? Why
Yes,
is
but
it
I don't
that
recall.
the whole plot line relates on a false sense of time, whereas like the
Okay,
plasma
but I
cannon
don't
is
recall
still
any-
a viable technology.
I don't recall any cringe dialogue in Star Trek or in Back to the Future, though, or even Star Wars Episode 5.
Right, but then you also have to compare
Wait a
it
minute.
to all of the
You
action
find-
writers.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Stop.
What
You
about
find no
Shatner's
cringe
acting?
dialogue in Star Trek 5? None?
Star Trek. Did I say Star Trek? I meant Empire Strikes Back. My bad.
Oh, okay. All right. That's fine. That's
Also,
fine.
what cringe dialogue in Star Trek 5 are
Empire
you
Strikes
thinking
Back,
of?
there's a kiss between brother and sister that wasn't officially brother and sister until episode 6.
Yeah, exactly. So it was retcon.
So that's the definition of bad writing.
I don't know.
You didn't know where the story was going to end, and so at the very end, suddenly they're related.
Okay, well that still doesn't. That's one.
Whereas
Okay.
Predators
Now do
has
Star
never
Trek
had
2.
to do that. But no, so that's what I mean. Like writing in that time, especially like writing your peers. So like if we judge Predators based off of all the other action movies and all the other horror movies time, not based on like Star Trek was legacy. They had all of the series canon to bank on, all that fans and all the people that were interested in Star Trek to bank on when focusing on writing this. They had stuff to work with, whereas Predators was a new idea in a new realm, and it
I
is
don't
today
know.
still stands up as a good
See-
good action movie. It doesn't stand up as an accurate action movie, but it's still fun. You enjoyed it, did you not?
Yeah, but okay. Hold on.
Yeah, but I didn't find it.
You're making the
profound or-
argument that Predator is new and unique. I'm sorry, dude. I know my mythology. Artemis hunting Orion. I'm sorry. It's
Right.
happened before
The
in the
story
mythology.
isn't new, but the filmography of the story was new. And that's what I'm talking about, is we're judging movies, not like this wasn't a book turned into a movie. This wasn't a TV show turned into a movie. This was a first pitch. This was a movie pitched, produced, and nailed it on the first try. It didn't take Predator 2 for Predator 1 to see the light of day. Predator 1 saw the light of day because it deserved to. Then and today, like rewatching it was still worth it for me as somebody who watches tons and tons of stuff in this realm. Like action sci-fi is probably my number one place to watch films. And so in this instance, the fact that the founding film still stands up to the newest film, even during a reboot, that speaks to how good the founding film was.
No,
Well-
I get where you're coming from, but I will say that, like, I've made this argument before. There is, there, as a well-worn Bible has written, there's nothing new under the sun, right?
No, but that's Foucaultian logic.
Right. But that being said,
And
I
Yeah.
do agree that it's a absolutely fantastic story.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think for me, it wasn't. I can't make it a 7 out of 7
No.
because, like, I can't get past that. Even in the 80s, there's a fair bit of cheese there, right? But that being said, I mean, it's still a fun ride, right? And I mean, it takes you along for the ride for the most part. And at the end of the day, that's really what I am looking for from a movie. I am looking for from a movie that when I start the movie, I am engrossed in that movie. Nothing else exists in my universe except for what's happening on that screen until the end of the movie. And then I can either go back to my life or I can start, telling other people how great it is. If it can do that, it meets my requirement for a 7 out of 7, right? Denis Villeneuve's Dune absolutely did that. I went with a bunch of friends to the theater. We watched it. And the two Dune heads in the group of friends who had read all the books were quickly going through a couple of pieces that the guys had questions about. And then very shortly afterwards, my nerd friends all had a book club going rereading Dune. That says to me a 7 out of 7 movie.
Yeah,
right.
I concur with that.
Blade Runner, similar idea. Very shortly after watching that, I'm picking up, I'm talking to friends about it. I'm loving the movie. I'm picking up Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. Right.
Well, then by that standards, that explains why I'm giving it a 7 out of 7. Because I watched Predator today, and then watched Predator 2 for the first time today, and then watched AVP for like the 5th time again today. Because as soon as I started, I wanted to, like, if I wasn't doing the show, I would still be finishing the rest of the franchise again. And I think, like, based off of your definition, for me, it hit that 7 out of 7. It did make me want to keep going, keep playing, keep watching the next one, and suffer through all the stuff that doesn't make sense. And because of that first one. So yeah. I guess it is definitely biased as far as like the A+, but it's definitely an A film.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing about our scaling system is we kind of do borrow that old Rod Ebert and Roper scale where they did thumbs up and thumbs down, and that's why I wanted to do the 7 thing. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get this. We got another fan mail from Arinde. Says, I'm similar. When I watch movies, I get completely engrossed. If you could listen to my thoughts, it would be the movie's soundtrack. Makes it hard to dislike any movie as I watch it. Afterwards, though, yeah, and that's I'm in a similar boat. Like, it's rewatchability for me. I'm not gonna go back and watch Predator or Prey probably for a few years just because it's not my kind of movie. But to what I'm saying to our point system is that's what we base it off of. Is we base it off of, do we like it? Do we dislike it? That's why we have a 4, because instead of making it, like as John brought up in before the show started, a 5 out of 10 is somehow worse than a 6 out of 10. The 10 scale does kind of get a little redundant in some areas. So 4 for us is like, if you reach a 4, then it's a passable product. Yeah, exactly. It's a C. And anything below a 4 is going to have that for its reasons. And then we have the different reasons for that. So we all agree it's at least 4 status.
Yeah, like you've got the, like, top tier stuff, the not quite top tier but worth watching, the better than average, the average, and then you get into what I like to refer to as the J.J. Abrams section of the scale.
Yeah, and that's where you got, like your 3 out of 7, which is like, for me, I hated it. I thought it was bad, but I can't, I have to acknowledge that there's some things I liked. 2 out of 7 is like, this is terrible, but it's necessary to be watched once. And then 1 out of 7 is when I'm like, don't waste your time. So
yeah, and the difference between a 6 and a 7, it's the difference between an A and an A+. Like, an A means that you met the metrics for good storytelling. As far as stories go, you told the story the right way. A+ is, okay, I now watched everything else afterwards, everything before I got back into the lore. It made me want to re-enjoy the franchise. And that makes complete sense to me then. Because, yeah, for me, Predators did bring me all the way back. And Prey did too. And that's... Whereas, like, for Prey, the difference between Prey being a 7 and Prey being a 6 for me is that Prey is a 7 in terms of subjective enjoyment, but it's a 6 in terms of the fact that, like, there are very hard points that still need to be addressed. And Corion and I, as much as friends as we are, still couldn't agree. Yeah. And that makes it a 6. That kills the 7 for me, because it's like, I proved it, and he still didn't agree with it because the proof wasn't good enough. And that means the writing wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I mean, look.
That takes that one little point.
And the neat thing is, through our discussion, John, I think we managed to actually pinpoint the exact scene that needed the writing buttoned up on.
Yep.
And I think that is cool. I think that is really cool. And that is like... because we both hit that point where it's like, okay, we acknowledge that the writing here needs buttoning up. And the fact that it's that one scene that could have made the difference, I think is fantastic. That we were able to sit down and have a reasonable enough discourse to get there together.
All right,
Yeah.
with that, it's time to move on. We do have to get to Turbolis, and this was a good discussion overall about Predator and stuff we'd like to see in future movies, and I think we had a very good valuable discussion overall. But with that, it's time for a quick word about our sort of pseudo sponsor, C&C Sutlery. C&C Sutlery, for all of your Civil War reenactment supplies. They provide everything from uniforms to sabers to all kinds of camping gear. Anything that you think you need for your Civil War reenactment, we've got it, or we at least know how to get you to the people that do. Now you might be wondering, why would a show like this have anything to do... Oh, pop my earpiece out. Give me a second. Why would this show have anything to do with Sutlery? What's the connection there? It's a little weird. And, they're fastly becoming one of the primary providers for a lot of movie studios. And that is a big deal because, especially if we end up becoming the primary movie studio purveyor, that's a huge deal. So... with that connection with pop culture, that is why I want to promote them. And of course, they keep me gainfully employed 3 days a week, so can't be too picky about that. But please, we do international shipping, so anywhere in the world, ccsutlery.com. Check us out.
And if you go to them, make sure to tell them
Please tell them the writer. Please tell you found out from the Writer Brothers, so we know we're getting through to fans and people who are interested. And actually, I can't get too specific, but we put out a huge order to a studio today. So, yeah. Terminal list.
Fan mail from Arende. It's a little weird. Fits right in. I mean, look at all of us in here. Exactly.
Yeah. No, don't judge us. Don't judge us store by its cover. We have had a couple of one of the delivery guys came in once, his first time in, and he's like, what's going on here? Because we have the Confederate flag painted on the front of the building. And, it's just a little bit, middle of BF nowhere, Idaho is like, this is just a little weird. And it's like, no, it's Civil War reenactment supplies. It's not, it throws you off for a second, but it's totally legit. Like I said, providing stuff for movie studios. So it's not just reenactors. It's anybody who wants to play. And that's just it too. The gear that we sell, for like camping and stuff, totally functional. All of it. It's not stupid props that are gonna break on you. Like, this is actual tin and stainless steel gear.
Prop.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna stock up on stuff this year for camping, but unfortunately it's been too hot, so maybe next year.
Yeah, and I just for the record, I think it's safe to say that all three of us here are pretty much pro-Union and not so much Confederate people.
So. I'm 100% anti-Confederate rebellion.
Yeah.
We lost.
Yeah.
I'm 1776. We'll just leave it at that.
There you go.
Terminal List is one of the most widely talked about shows right now, which is of course why we had to do it. No, not just that. It was also the fact that the book is so amazing and really a story worth diving into and getting along. So we've been watching it one episode a week now, and this week was episode 4 for us. And for those of you watching along at home, next week will be episode 5. So if you're just now tuning into this for the first time, you have plenty of time to catch up to 5 episodes and get caught up. Or you can read the book like I did and know everything that's supposed to happen. Of course, it doesn't all happen exactly as it did. They definitely shuffled a lot of events around, but for the narrative of the screen version versus the book story, and this is what I've ultimately come to end up loving about this series, is the fact that both mediums are worth your time. So I still put emphasis on the book. But who wants to do plot summary for this week's episode?
I was so confused by the plot. I would really appreciate it if one of you guys would take this one through me.
Okay. John, you want to take it?
I'm gonna send this one to you because I finished the whole series, so I still haven't gone back and rewatched the episodes.
Okay, so Episode 4 is basically one of the it's one of the high points in the story as well. It pretty much, a lot of it centers around James getting, he's been getting his vengeance, but this one was the real personal vengeance moment that it culminated into, and that's really what this episode's primary focus was. Well, there's some of the B plot stuff that's going on in the background. There's a couple of things to note that I can't remember off the top of my head. The biggest one, of course, is catching and, of course, disposing of the people who murdered James's wife and daughter. Now, when I first watched this scene, it disturbed me for a couple of days. This is, as far as horror gore porn goes, that's pretty much my limit. And I have to give credit where due in this sequence. The directors made the smart decision of not showing every specific detail, and that's what I loved about it. Well, not really loved, but that's what I appreciated most about it, was the fact that they did still leave some pieces of it up to the imagination. So for those that don't, I guess I'll just re-summarize specifically what happens is James and his brother-in-arms and a whole fire team, they get together and they go after, they find out where the location of the actual assassin was who killed James' wife and daughter. And they come up with this plan. They originally, the plan is, no, Reese, we can send in a team of operators and we'll bring him back in pieces and vengeance will be done. You don't need to risk your own life. Everyone's worried about James's life and well-being, and James is like, and he counters their logic with one simple question every single time. He's like, were you in my position? Would you do differently? Would you accept him just being sent in pieces? And everyone's like, no, I'd want to put my hands around his throat personally. So he goes off on his mission, and they do the mission. There's a well-coordinated firefight. Ben takes a couple of minor hits, so that adds more realism to the fight. It's not just everyone's got plot armor. Some people take some damage that's to be expected. And finally, the controversial interrogation / I call it the execution scene because it's an execution. He's not interrogating anybody. And at first, disemboweling is not a pretty thing. The first time I saw that on a movie was Machete, and it was in the most ridiculous and convoluted way where he uses it as a rope swing to swing from one level of the hospital to the next. So I was like, yeah, of course, that's the way to do it. But in this, it's done simply for the purpose of a very slow and very painful death. Like I said, at first this scene really bothered me because I thought, well, maybe that was a little excessive. Maybe that was too much. But then it hit me when I thought about it in this context. When he has the guy, he's got him cuffed and he's, the assassin basically spits in James' face, literally. And I realized that was the moment that James Reese decided to disembowel him. He wasn't planning on doing it. He was probably looking to gauge his response, because if he had been like, oh, I'm so sorry, it was business, the money was too good, I was so dumb, I could have seen James just put a bullet to his head and called it a day right there. But he didn't. He spat in his face. He's like, oh, what are you gonna do? You gonna kill me? Ooh, oh, wow. Yes, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you by ripping out your colon, stapling it above your head, and making you walk your guts out. That is a shitty way to go. Pun intended. And I ended up coming around to it and realizing, yeah, I don't think I would do any differently, because if I was in James's position and this person so arrogantly and pompously thinks he's going to get out of this easily, you bet I'm going to think of the most painful way. And what's more painful than stapling your colon above your head and making you walk your guts out?
Okay, so I get all this, and that section of it made sense, but here are the pieces I'm still trying to put together. I'm not even sure what nationality the dude is. I want to say Latin or vaguely Mediterranean dude whose house they're staying at.
Yeah.
Who exactly is he to them? Like, I get that his father was friends, but like, is he like a drug lord or something like that? Because it feels like he might be a drug lord that they're just like
I
friendly
wanna
on terms with.
Parker might know the exact connection from the book, but I want to say the show alludes to it being a something to do with like the movie you just reviewed with Clint Eastwood, Heartbreak Ridge.
Yeah.
I want to say it's like those seals. An event around that is when the frogmen met this dude. And then James Reese's dad is a frogman. This dude reveres Reese and Reese's family as basically like saviors. So
Okay.
it seems like there was like a formal saving by Reese's dad.
Okay,
And
but
then
he's got
from
like
there, he basically like raised Reese while Reese's dad was still a frogman.
okay, but like the dude knows like the dude either knows or has his own operators.
He definitely does. There's many in the loadout, like the whole time that they're loading up for this mission, he's saying that his operators are finding them. So it could be either, I want to say he's Mexican intelligence.
I think that's what
Okay.
it is. Yeah.
or the CIA.
Okay, that works for me because that was the piece that I was missing.
Okay.
Was I have no idea where this dude is coming from other than like he was friends with the guy's father, right? Because like I
Mhm.
wasn't sure where this was going because like I was sitting there like, is this dude just like a friendly drug lord with the CIA? Like, like I have no idea where he fits into the puzzle. And I think that's what my problem was with large swaths of this episode, is just trying to figure out who controls these particular puzzle pieces, especially as more of the conspiracy is getting exposed. And like I get that like we're getting, some idea of where this tumor is coming from. We're not getting why, but we're getting where it's coming from. And if I feel like at this point, if the answer to the why is just pure friggin' profit, I'm gonna be disappointed. Like, I want something more to it, right? Like, I want this to be like the new cool steroid they were selling to the American military, and it just has the side effect of, being terrible for the operators. But who cares because they're just operators kind of attitude. I would be fine with that. But if it is just for like the standard military industrial complex, problem of cold hard cash being hard to ignore, I'm going to be a little disappointed in that. Not going to lie. And I love that you guys are just sitting there silent. So this is
Sorry.
clearly an
Wife was
important
using the
plot
vacuum.
point.
I can't. It's.
I'm not going to confirm or deny.
Yeah,
this.
me neither. I can't. I
But-
mean, I'll just say this: you're on the right path, and so you might be set up for some
That's
disappointment.
confirming his suspicions.
Okay.
I don't.
But-
okay, you're definitely not going to be set up for disappointment.
Yeah, exactly. I would just say like,
It's
yeah,
to me.
curb your
This is like-
enthusiasm a little bit. You'll be
No.
fine.
Okay,
So I don't
To
flip
me,
the whole
it's
table, but just
very-
like a
it's a
dollhouse
very-
table.
no, it's very much a nominal justification, like a justification that would exist in reality for both why the drug was created and for all the events that have occurred.
Let me put it to you like this,
That
Corion.
being said, each part of it plays like that's why I wanted to do it in this episodic structure, was because like Corion's the perfect example of what I wanted from this. Everything that he keeps having an issue with, this show actually takes the time to resolve. And as we're going through this resolution, like that's why I've been so hyped. That's why I've enjoyed it. And now Parker, like you finished the book, so like you are now riding the same high I am, and I still haven't read the book. Like I'm getting more excited for the book because watching Parker be just as excited about the end of the show, even though he's not there. Whereas like I'm at the end of the show and haven't even started the book. And Corion's like, I'm so confused. And I'm like, that's why I love this show.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
so fun and it worked. Like, it's not like season 8 of Game of Thrones where they just
No.
ended it as fast as they could. Instead, it's like seasons 1 through 4 where it's like, oh, I think I know what's going. I rewatched the whole thing again, and there's like 7 other plot points that may or may not still hold and still count from episode 1. And that's what this show is. Like, episode 1, all that confusion still tracks at episode, I think 7 is the end, 7 or 8.
8.
And then even like the resolution, you're like, okay, that makes sense. But is that really going on right now? And we just aren't getting it in our media?
All right.
Ugh,
That's good.
it's
Stop.
dirty. It's so good.
So no, Corey, it's yeah, you're not entirely wrong with what you're suspecting, but just wait.
No, I think you will be satiated. I
I agree.
I can't confirm or deny that it's going to be the resolution you want, but I can tell you for sure there's a full explanation. It's not, there is no willy-nilly one-off like, oh yeah, corporate capitalism. That makes sense.
Okay. Because like if this was like just purely about corporate greed, there'd be a fairly large table flip because I'd just be annoyed, right? Like, it's not necessarily a bad plot. I am enjoying the ride, right? But if that's what it boiled down to, it's like watching, like a movie that's taking you on a really good run, and at the end of it, it's like, stay in school, kids. I'd be like, okay, come on, like, get lost, right? But if it stays consistent enough that you could wonder, okay, is this happening right now? Are we doing this to our people? That's something that I'd be intrigued to see.
You bring up a really interesting point with that, and I'm wondering if maybe that's how we should just start ending all our videos from now on. Not just on TWB, but your personal videos. Mary Pete, Mary Meet, Mary Part, Mary Begin. Stay in school, kids.
Yeah,
even if it's just not even related to anything with kids, that's gonna be our new thing. Stay in school.
I don't know what else I don't know how else to explain it, right?
That's a good explanation, but I'm like, man, what a great random ass tagline to start putting at the end of videos from now on. It just makes no sense.
No, but that's it, right? I mean, it's like it's like the G.I. Joe episodes, right? Like those like little PSAs at the end of the video or end of the show had nothing to do with the plot of the show.
Yeah.
Right? At all.
But
they were good. But
knowing is half the battle. The other half is the plot of the show.
Yeah, and you see here, I always thought the other half was like guns, right? Like lots and lots
gratuitous
of
violence.
No, we already talked about Predator.
Ha! I don't know. Terminal List still has some pretty impressive
Dude, James
equipment
Reese
in there
is the
too.
next candidate.
Well, yeah, but this isn't just an action-oriented series. Don't get me wrong, the action's there, and the action's good, but I love this show because it's the perfect blend of action shoot-'em-up with brain massaging and plots and plotting.
It's a drama.
It's a drama. It's good.
I would say this is a dramatic action movie because there is so much more real on drama than there is action. But I would also give it a little taste of thriller because it does do a lot to mess with you in terms of like what is actually going on. But I think like the craziest thing about this is like this is what every honorable hero thinks of themselves as, like even if you aren't a tier 1 operator, if you've never met a tier 1 operator, you probably think you're close enough to a tier 1 operator to operate like this. And that's what I mean is like, this is one of the few times where the noble warrior is set in modern times and actually maintains being a noble warrior. Because even in this episode with the grotesque violence, it's only attributed to the one person responsible for the most grievous sin against the main character. The main character has the nobility to he had no idea he was going in and saving kids. He had ideas that there might be kids there, but they're more like child warriors, the kids in Africa, right? Like they're more likely to just grab a gun and kill you because that's what they've been trained to do than they are to, listen to you and be saved or even want to be saved. And that he still took the time. Like there's this scene where they go in and they find all these kids. You see him come in there, super operator, like, I'm gonna put anybody down that's in this room. And as the kids listen, you don't see him lose his temperament. You don't see him suddenly go, oh son, I got you, oh you're a good boy. No, he's like, all right, go. Like, he keeps his operator mentality, and that proves that, like, the operator mentality isn't toxic masculinity. It's constant focus in the moment. Like, yeah, you're loud, but that's because you need your point to get across. Yeah, you're short. That's because you need your point to be perfectly understood. You're not being mean by being loud and short, unless you're saying mean things when you're being loud and short. And that's what this show really demonstrates, is that, like, the operator isn't always this angry, mean, toxic masculinity person of anger.
Well, there's nothing
They are a
toxic
person
about
of
it.
focus. Exactly.
Person of authority. And that's what
go ahead. Everybody I have met who I would consider in that tier 1 vein, they always approach the work in a very almost mathematical, methodical fashion. There's no positive or negative emotion attached to it. It's just the job is insert here, eliminate threats here, move to HVT, capture HVT, extract. Right?
And I loved how they communicated all of that. Like, this felt almost like a field operation in an actual war zone, because they were communicating everything they were doing. Which is what you're supposed to do. Moving, reloading, that stuff, you think in Call of Duty that people just, the characters say for fun. No, that's what you communicate, because your team needs to know, why aren't you shooting down range? Why aren't you covering my ass? Oh, because you're out of ammo. Okay, so I need to cover your ass till you're fully loaded. And so, yeah, I really liked how they coordinated it. It was all believable. It was all, well, I don't know, except I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think Pratt was doing wing rifle style, which
so wing rifle style actually applies when you're in close quarters, in case you need to use your elbow as, like, a weapon.
Okay.
So, like, when you're in close quarters, that's why the whole adjustable stock thing. When you're at long range, you want your stock out here, but when you're close quarters,
use
you want
that
your
elbow
gun
to your
close to
advantage.
Shoulder.
Stable.
And then, like,
okay,
there's a lot of stuff that if you want to know how to pretend to be a tier 1 operator, watch this show, and it tells you every single step that they teach you. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to actually understand why they're doing everything, because you don't have the teacher explaining all the nuance to every piece. But, like, the way he clears, the reason why his rifle is sideways is because, like, when you're in a room, you're aiming with the barrel. You don't need to aim with the sights, because if you do,
you're too close for it to matter.
Yeah, anything over 25 yards, and it's not a handgun. If it's a rifle, you can aim with the barrel, or under 25 yards.
Yep.
In most rooms, are only about 10.
I didn't know that, so thanks. That's something I'm gonna have to do with the range now.
And that's why I say this show's so good, is because, like, it may not be that you're gonna suddenly be James Reese. You're gonna suddenly be a SEAL operator. But if you ever run into a situation where you run into SEAL operators and they're trying to tell you to do stuff, and you remember everything from this movie, you're gonna be a great civilian to work with. You're always going to stay behind them. You're always going to be on the hip that isn't doing anything. And that is what you can learn from this movie. But also, like, this is a pretty great show for guerrilla tactics. Like, this is how you handle a situation when you're a small squad of operators. Obviously, the training, the resources, the connections, all of that matters. But at the end of the day, the person doing the operating needs to know all that stuff individually. And that's who James Reese is. He's a well-trained fighter. And he knows that training, not just, like, he doesn't know just jujitsu. He doesn't know it in terms of, like, in Afghanistan we did this, but in America we did this. He's like, no, when you're clearing a building, you clear a building like this every time. This is how you clean a room. This is how you know you're good. This is how you communicate. Like, this show did a great job. Like, even the operators that joined them, that were the proto fathers operators. Like all the communication, even though it was broken between English and Spanish, it still made sense across operators. Move. What does that mean? I'm set and shooting rounds down range for covering fire while he moves. Set. What does that mean? I get to move. Like, you don't need to know English or Spanish. You just need to know that, like, once he starts putting down range, you say what you're doing so he knows that he's covering you. And that, like, this show's really good on how to do it. And it's because they had Jack Carr, an actual Navy SEAL, influencing these parts. And the directors actually listened. The director didn't go, well, that doesn't make sense for this action movie. The director said, okay, well, how do I make the cameras make that look cool? Because that's how you're supposed to do it. I'm going to make that look cool, but you're still going to do it the way you're supposed to.
No.
And that's the beauty of the show, for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I mean, it's like I said, they kind of shuffle a few things and play them out differently, but I could see why, because and that's where the director comes in to help the show help the book make sense on a screen perspective. And that's probably why Jack Carr agreed to the changes as well, was because, well, yeah, it's a story that you want to keep your audience interested in. You don't want to just give everything away and then it's like hope that they stick around to see how it ends. So I do like the delivery method of the show. I've come around to it. Like I said, there's still a couple of things I would have kept original, but even then, that's just
dwindling as we've gone on.
It's just
which
nitpicking
is really
at this
nice.
point. Yeah. No, like I said, I'm glad they didn't show every gory detail of the execution itself, because, man, and honestly, him making those loud noises while walking was enough for me. I was like, yeah, I know exactly what's happening right now. He's getting his stomach's pulling out, followed by his spleen, followed by everything it's all just yanked out, and it's painful. I imagine. I mean, the worst I've ever had was appendicitis, so yeah. I never thought to pull out my own colon and see what happens. It probably never will. But
yeah, my general rule of thumb is the red stuff is supposed to stay on the inside.
yeah.
So, I tend to try to keep it that way.
Yeah. And
Same.
Pratt's
I kind of like it there. It fits nicely.
well,
Yeah.
Well organized.
Yeah.
And the other reason the scene works and it's not it's not degrading to the character or the memory of the character's loved ones is really because Pratt's acting comes through in this sequence. He does a very good job of internally you almost feel like he's ready to just slit the guy's throat for spitting on him. But he doesn't. He pauses for a moment. And then he grabs out the tomahawk and goes to town. And then he hardly says like 3 words to the guy. He staples it, cuts him loose, and then says, walk. And that's
And
it.
he doesn't relish in it.
Exactly.
He doesn't like, there's no joy across his face. Like, it's like, we've seen it time and again in movies. It's cliche at this point. The idea that like certain people enjoy getting revenge, but once you get revenge, it doesn't change the fact that your loved ones are dead. And that's what we watched. This guy didn't enjoy getting revenge. And according to his moral compass, according to his code of honor, it had to be done. And it had to be done in such a way that was equal to the crime committed against him. And it had to be equal to the person's individual feelings of the crime. Because if the had only done 2 to the chest, 1 to the head for the wife and the daughter, or just 1 to each head, and when when James Reese gets there and is like, goes to confront him, and he's like, I haven't been the same since. Like, or if he finds him at his grandma's house, just completely like, his grandma's like, you can't take him. He's like, I'm gonna take him. And then and then he goes into the room, and this guy's just been sitting on the floor, completely like, he looks like malnourished, like he hasn't eaten since the crime. Then you would see James Reese respond differently.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, he walks in on a gangster with a gangster attitude, Hey, Orville Nation, welcome, welcome. Fan mail, how are you guys doing? Phenomenal. So glad you stopped by.
Yeah. I even actually get the impression that, like, look, if his team had just been beaten by their betters, right? He probably wouldn't be out on this revenge kick. If it had been just a really super clean kill on his wife and kid, and when he shows up and tracks down this assassin, and the assassin goes, look, it's nothing personal, it was business, it was a job, I did it. I didn't take any sort of pleasure in this at all. It was just what I had to do. Here's the guys above me. I'm just the machine. This is the finger that pulled the trigger. I could even see Reese being like, yeah, okay, I can understand that. And
It seemed just
leaving
hitting
it
him
all.
and
Yeah.
walking away.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I could totally see that. It's because it's such a unique situation that we get what we get.
Yeah.
Well, and I love it because it really does paint that it's this adage I used to hear all the time. Everybody wants to be a gangster until they have to do gangster things.
Yeah.
And that was what this was. Like, this gangster, and in terms of gangster, cartel members are the worst. And by worst, I do mean like the most egregious at committing gang violence. And as such, he went against the honorable warrior who's trained by other honorable warriors. And in that moment, you see the difference between a cartel gangster who has killed many and never had a problem with it and has no care for death, no fear of death, as they all say. And then you watch a tier 1 operator give him and all of his friends a reason to fear death. Because the only reason James Reese was able to destroy the entire cartel compound was because this guy went to LA and killed Reese's family. If this guy had never interacted with this tier 1 operator, this tier 1 would not have really started a coup against this cartel and won.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between the cartel and the tier 1 operators. Like, the cartel may be good, but they don't have morality on their side. And so when the moral warrior comes to fight, the moral warrior has so much more behind him than the drug dealer and the gangster. Because even if the gangster says he's fighting for his home, he's also killing his home at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean,
Whereas
look,
the noble warrior says he's fighting for his home and he's never dropped a bomb.
No, he's
in
just
his
killing
own
other people's
neighborhood.
homes.
yeah. Now, I will put this out there just for those people who are listening that are a little, sensitive to such things. Look, we are in no way condoning any sort of, extreme vengeance upon people. I think all of us here would much rather have justice play out appropriately than any sort of crazy revenge fantasies. But this situation, as it is explained in the series and in the books, is a very unique case.
Well, and that's
why it gets a different pass for me. If this was a revenge fantasy like Get Shorty, I probably wouldn't be into it. But because of the way it's going down, it is a different animal.
Yeah, and that's a fan mail from RN Day. Night will fall and the dark will rise when a good man goes to work. That's basically the first line of the book. This is a revenge story of what happens when you piss off an apex predator. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but that's what it sets you up for. It's like this is if you want to get technical,
Predator without his tech and a moral compass.
Yeah. This is technically it is a revenge fantasy, but it's looking at it from the practical perspective of what if this happened to you. Corione, you're probably the most qualified of both of us here because you actually do have a wife and daughter. Whereas I only have a wife and John has, a lame son. And I'm just kidding, John. No, John did relate to this a lot, and we have talked about this, but I would like to hear from you. Would you do anything differently in this scenario?
First, I want to say for the record that I feel incredibly, incredibly sorry for the poor soul that attempts to do anything untoward to my wife. Because if you think I am in any way scary, She beats me handedly in that regard. Now,
No, I don't think you're scary. That's what scares the shit out of me.
yeah, well, right? Because if you're not terrified of her, you should be. But that being said, look, there is nothing I wouldn't do for my family. And I know that a situation where somebody had done something completely untoward won't fix the problem. But you can be damn sure I'd be making sure that person would never be in a position to ever do it to somebody else's family.
Yes.
Now, what form that took would significantly depend on the situation.
Yeah.
I'm very unlikely to be coming back from a screwed up operation from Afghanistan anytime soon. Mostly because I don't like deserts as a rule. I'm not a big sand person, but
Okay, calm down there, Darth Vader.
yeah, well, yeah. I'm not saying I'm Darth Vader, but yeah, well,
no beach for you.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, you know what? I'm really not a beach person either.
No, that's fine. Key West doesn't just have beaches. It also has harbors and docks that just drop off right in the water. Probably right up your alley.
Yeah, that's actually perfect. I'll realistically though, if you get me anywhere near water, I'm probably gonna have my scuba diving gear out and I'll be under it. So, but yeah, that being said, like I said, I'd be damn sure making sure that never happened to somebody else's family from that individual ever again.
Yeah.
And what form that took really depends on the situation. This is a unique situation where I'm sure Reese would love to go through the law, except for one problem. There is no law that applies to these people.
Yep. Fan mail from Arende. Sand goes everywhere. LOL. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It's my idea of a beach day is
I
just
think
kind
that
of
was-
walking on a beach for like a minute and then going to a restaurant because I've done that
I
as a
think
kid.
that-
And, yeah.
I think that was a continuation of your line quoting the great Darth Vader.
Yeah.
hate
It gets
sand.
everywhere.
It's
It's
coarse and
coarse.
gets
Gets
everywhere.
everywhere. But not like here. It's beautiful here. Let's kiss awkwardly.
Oh God.
Hey, I'll still take episode 2 over the sequels any day.
I agree, but I would. I just wish George Lucas could learn to write a love scene. He's never successfully done it.
In the grand scheme of everything else we got, okay. I mean, sure, he could probably write better romance. I thought I did a pretty okay job with romance myself, and that's not like.
Yeah, you did good.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
you did good.
All right. Last 4 minutes rather. Real quick. I do have a couple of plugs, but first, John, if you could back me up here, let's give a quick shout out to Orville Nation, who has joined us in the discussion a little bit, or is at least listening, and we do appreciate your support and your continued shout outs and helping us grow, man. We are now up to 71 subscribers, and that is in no small part due to you, sir, and of course Arende and everybody else who helps share and spread the word. You guys are what's helping us to grow. We want to try and be that sort of, we want to be your Tuesday night home. That's really what we'd like to be, your discussion for a lot of stuff. We do have a Deep Space Nine watch through that we are starting in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from tonight, on September 6th, is Deep Space Nine. We're probably just going to do episode 1, and then we'll probably, obviously, Terminal List is still going to be going at that time.
We should do episode 1 and 2 because it's a two-parter for the opener.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I consider... Yeah, Emissary to be one episode. So yes, Emissary parts 1 and 2 will be the first. So you guys have time if you want to schedule, put out a schedule for that, and then we'll release a schedule weekly of how many episodes, because I have no interest in doing season 1 and 2 week by week. I'd like to get through those 2 seasons somewhat fast, reasonably fast, let's say.
Let's get to the good stuff as quickly as possible.
Yes, because once we hit season 3, oh man, I'm so excited.
Yeah, John, there are like 3 episodes in specifics that I am really looking forward to seeing your take on them.
Yes.
Really looking forward.
I would also like to give a
Excited.
shout out to Anti-Derivative Jill. If you haven't heard of this person, she is currently doing a weekly review of the original series of Star Trek. She's a huge TOS fan, and she's got other Trek fans that she talks with, and they're doing one episode a week, but of course it's only 3 seasons, so it's not that bad. I didn't watch her stream all the way through and on the replay because she's streaming when I'm at work, but from what I do listen to when they talk about episodes I do like on the original series, and I mean it's Star Trek discussion, and it's somebody else who's doing Trek. So, I mean, if you want to get in on that as well, please do. She's a great, very knowledgeable when it comes to Star Trek. She knows totally what she's talking about. She's also a moderator for a lot of other communities like ours. So she does a lot of work here on YouTube, and definitely very deserving of the support.
She's also the sweetest human being.
I don't know her that well, but you do. And so, yeah. She seems nice. I like talking to her when I do talk to her. But yeah, cool community, and yes, they do. She actually does a really good job with crowd interaction, and so yes, she will definitely acknowledge your opinions there. Arende fan mail says Avery Brooks is such an amazing actor. He is so good at conveying strong emotions. 100% agree.
Yes, he's also a pool shark. Do not play pool with that man for money.
Yeah. All right, quickly, guys. If you want to get your plug in real quick, any of them?
Yeah. So I'm Corion, your
got,
witch in
like,
residence
20
on
seconds.
YouTube, and I run a show on Sundays. Come check it out. We are really cool, and we also do the Rogue Council every other Thursday. This is a week off. Next week we will be back with new and wacky woo-woo stuff for you to enjoy.
Yep. Absolutely. So I want to thank all you guys again for tuning in, and especially watching on the replay or listening to the podcast. We love doing this. I'm Petey York with the Ryder Brothers. Stay cool. Stay cool, kids.